Good afternoon, everyone, and with video for once. I haven't actually prepared any slides for this, so you don't get any shiny intros, I'm afraid, and it's just me on the call anyway, so I don't need to do all the chopping and changing of video. So welcome to this specific Ask Me Anything. I am thinking this is going to go one of three ways. Firstly, my ISP is having technical difficulties today. So basically, this could mean that they get DDoSed and I have to go offline. And if that happens, I'm sorry, and we'll reschedule this for next week. The second way this could go is that nobody asks any questions. This is quite possible, but I have plenty of content and I can go through it all. I have an agenda. And the final way is that you ask lots of questions and we spend the whole time going through questions, and that's totally fine too. So either of those things is absolutely fine by me. So let me start while you're thinking about your questions. How can you get your questions to me is a good thing to cover. So IRC is fine, or Matrix, obviously. So you can send me private messages or pop them in the Foreman channel. And just make sure you tag my username, and I will be monitoring that. And then the second thing is obviously you can use the YouTube chat, which I'm also looking at as well. If you want to come on and have an extended discussion with me, then let me know. I can give you the broadcast URL, and you can come join the Hangout. I'm quite happy to have a few people on here. The only reason I haven't broadcast it to everyone is because obviously there's a 10 user limit in the Hangout, and I don't want to just trash the place, basically. But I'm quite happy to have users on if they want to chat. So get in touch with me if you want to do that. Just another word of warning. I have a cold, so I'm horribly bunged up, and I'll probably need to cough and blow my nose and things. So I apologize for that. So let's set the scene. What are we talking about? Let me start doing a little bit of screen sharing here. So I'm going to start with Firefox, I think, if it'll let me. It's going to be a pest, isn't it? It's going to be an absolute pest. Let's see. I think I have to. This thing. Oh, there we go. There we go. I've got one window I can share with you, but I'm going to change to a new tab first. So let me bring up Google Groups. So it's groups.google.com and Foreman users. Here we go. So I'm going to share this with you. Here we go. So this here is our current mailing list, and about a week ago, I think, I posted a proposal to the mailing list. Yeah, 6 days ago. And basically what I said was, I want to make a big change to our community. I want to say that this is that mailing lists are not serving as well. They've done well. We've used mailing lists for 8 years, but perhaps it's time to think about a change. And I've spent a bit of time playing around with some alternatives, and I think one proposal is to go with Discourse, which is a piece of forum software. And I did a 10-minute video on that last week, which you may or may not have seen. And that's really just a very brief overview of why I think it's a good idea. And I'm going to quickly recap that right now, so you don't have to watch both. Why do I think this is a good idea? Well, let me show you some data. Let me show you some data. Down here, we have a graph I just drew. I drew this last week. This is a graph of the mailing list traffic over the last 6 years. It's not pleasant reading for me as a community lead, because as you can see, over the last 2 years, it has tailed off significantly. Here we are. We're about. This is about 2 years ago here, right? This is October 15. So if I start about here, rough sort of average around this time was about 400 posts per month on the dev list. Sorry, on the users list. Dev list was a bit of a lull, but spiked here. We were getting in the region of 400 posts per month, and now we look over here, and if I take it over the last sort of 6 months or so, it's more like 200. So it's halved in the last 2 years, and the same kind of trend is visible in all 3 lines. However, if I look at this from the point of view of IRC, I don't see the same. Let me see if I can share that data. I actually have that in LibreOffice, which might be a pain to share. If I bring this over, and then can I share this? Yes, I think I can. Let's have a look. Applications. Here we go. So this is a graph I literally prepared 10 minutes ago. I spent my time doing this instead of a slide deck. I think you'll agree it's probably more useful. This is up here is the amount of text, like the number of lines of text over about a 30-day period over the last 2 years. In this case, I only have data from January 2016, unfortunately. And here again, this is the number of nicknames in IRC that said at least one line. So what I don't have is the number of people idling in the channel, right? So that's a different metric that I don't have. But this is the number of people who've said things, and this is the amount of things that were said. And what you can see over the 2 years here is that these are actually pretty consistent. They haven't changed. And they haven't grown either, which is slightly disappointing from someone who's trying to grow the community, but at least it hasn't shrunk. But the mailing list has. And if you assume that there's some positive influence or something going on to keep this one stable, then it's absent on the mailing list. Or if you assume this is stable, then there's some negative influence which is causing the mailing list to degrade. Regardless of which of those is true, I think we have a problem. I think the mailing list no longer serves all of the things that we need it to do. I feel we need to be better at engaging with the user base. We need to be better at helping people to find the answers that they're looking for. To know when things are solved, to be able to re-engage with the community. I think we have quite a lot of people who post once and are never seen again, and I would really like to try and avoid that in the future. Or you can't avoid it completely, of course, but to have ways of trying to re-engage people. There's tools you can use for that, and forums are quite good at it. I also think there's a good ability here to recognize regular users. When you look at a mailing list, the only thing you have is how many times did someone post, whereas here you have much more fine-grained metric data about things like how accurate are people's posts. How many times have people said that solved my problem? How many times have people said I like this? This is a good thing. This is useful to me. So you can take those people who are regular contributors and quality contributors, and you can use that to funnel into other things. So it all kind of it's a bit of a feedback loop, right? You try and build a feedback loop. So with that in mind, I started to look around at what we could do, and pretty quickly I realized Discourse was going to be a good fit from my perspective. On top of what I've already talked about, Discourse has further features which we're going to go into a little bit later, which allow us to solve some other problems, like how do we get the right people engaged in a discussion? How do we try and improve discussions in general? Something certainly, I don't know how much, there's not a lot of crossover between the users list and the dev list, and that's another thing that I think a forum helps with. If everything's going on in the same place, just in different categories, then I think we have a better case for people seeing discussions and choosing to join in on them, even if that wouldn't be something they'd normally do. And that's not what you tend to see with mailing lists. You don't tend to see people joining another mailing list just because of one interesting thing that perhaps came up that they might have a view on. So I think we get better interaction. And then when you do talk about those discussions, the dev list has long had a problem with concluding discussions or deciding whether or not something is a good idea. So again, I'm interested in how do we get a clearer picture of what people feel. It's very easy for a couple of loud voices to drown out quieter voices, and that's bad for decision making. So particularly new members of teams can have interesting opinions on things, but it's quite often the case that they don't want to jump in on a thread that's got 20 mails from long established people, but they feel a lot more comfortable quite often in plus wanting something, if there's a nice and easy way to do that. So quality of debates, bringing the right people into debates, quality of answers, quality of support for users, re-engagement of users, and of course, critically, still being able to interact by email for those who don't want to move over to the UI were all kind of my feature set that I was looking for. And Discourse does all of this. And so what I want to do today is to give you all a little bit of an overview. I mean, so far I have no questions. And for those who are watching, I can see there's about 10 people watching at the moment. Do fire your questions at me if you want to know more about specific use cases or how certain things work as we go. I'll happily take those questions. So what I'm going to move on to is I'm going to give you a look around the Discourse interface. I'm going to do it from the point of view of me. I'm an admin, so I see a lot of things. But we will talk a little bit about what the new user experience is like and how you get involved. And Then, assuming we don't get any questions or anything, we don't get diverted onto various topics, then I'm also going to be talking about how we might migrate. There's some open questions there. I'm quite free. I mean, the first thing we should say is that this is not a guaranteed, right? If you like this, you need to tell us. It's very difficult to know what people want, and the last thing anybody wants is to do a migration that 80% of the community will hate, right? That would be a very bad thing. I accept that a proportion of the community will hate this, and that we will likely lose them. The question is, will we gain more people than we lost? I think yes. I think there is a proportion of people who really like this kind of interface, and that we will be able to grow the community because of it. But if tons and tons of you think this is a bad idea, you have to tell me, right? Because otherwise I'm going to be completely wrong. I don't think I'm wrong, otherwise I wouldn't have proposed it. But if I am, you got to say so. Equally, if you like it, you've got to say so as well, because if I don't know for sure, then I have to guess, and I hate guessing. I'd rather know that you people like this, so you've got to come out and tell me. We've had quite a lot of feedback on the dev list already. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go over a couple of those comments, because the people on the users list won't necessarily have seen what those comments were. So let me go back here. Can I go? That's not going to let me use it. Okay, so Foreman -dev. Here we go. I'm not going to represent everybody. I don't have time to go into everything. So anyone I don't mention, please don't be upset. I'm not deliberately singling you out for forgetting. I'm just trying to cover a reasonable selection. So let me see here. Search for Discourse. So here we go. So there are a few people who jumped in. Go to the top of the list. I'm not going to read this whole thing. If you want to, please do come and have a look. I go into a lot of detail on what I think is a good idea and so on. So we had a comment from Eric, who likes the idea of expanded topic areas, so the ability to be flexible in, if you think about mailing lists, you don't easily get people to sign up to new mailing lists, right? So if we wanted to create a mailing list for, let's say, events, or a mailing list specifically for Catello, or a mailing list for something else that we haven't thought of yet, nobody goes and signs up for those, right? You have pretty much zero membership to start with, and that's very hard to work with and very hard to grow. But if you have a new category in the forum that everyone's already looking at anyway, then this is much easier to scale. Whilst it is common wisdom not to have too many categories in a forum, you can have a few, right? And so this might work. So this was one of Eric's points, and also that the advanced power is useful. This is all me. So Lukash jumped in. Lukash is quite strongly against this. I don't think I'm misrepresenting him there. He's put comments on both the dev and the users list. If you are a strong user of email and would prefer to stick with email, then you absolutely need to go and read his comments. So that's absolutely worth doing. Ivan, Marek, Martin as well, Martin Bukowski have all been cautious, which is fine. They're not coming down either way just now, and that's absolutely fine too. And then we had let's see, Neil. So Neil was straight in saying that he likes this, and that he knows people who won't come near a mailing list. So this is good. And so on and so forth. Edward said, similar to Martin and Marek, etc., that he sees it as a loss for himself, but it might well be worthwhile for the community as a whole. And I think that's a very nuanced view. That we might have to make some personal sacrifices for something that benefits the whole community. I know I like mailing lists, right? I've been in open source 20 years. I understand and I work with mailing lists. I just don't think they work for us anymore, and that's a very different statement. And that's probably the end of that thread, mostly. And then a few other people jumped in. Yeah, that I've already spoken about Marek, and I think also Dmitry, Ohad, and Toma, and Andrew Schofield from the community have all said that they like it, that it's going to be useful. So In general, oh, John as well, and Sebastian. So mostly speaking, we've had pretty good feedback from quite a bit of the dev community already. But so far, we've only had 1+1 from the users community from Bernard. So please, we do want to hear more from you guys. Please come and join in and say whether you like this or not. However, what are we actually talking about? I haven't actually shown you what it looks like yet, right? Which is ridiculous. So let's actually get on with that. Now, I'm 15 minutes in, and I haven't actually shown you the UI yet. So this is the community.theforeman.org discourse instance. So community.theforeman.org is absolutely where you can go to have a look at what's going on. And this is not what you'll be greeted by if you're a new user. Let me log out and view it as an anonymous user. There we go. So this is what you'll see when you the first time you come to the Discourse instance. And what can we say here? Well, first of all, we have this global banner. This needs some tweaking, and I absolutely want some help in how to write this. But it's what's called a global banner, and you can dismiss it once you've seen it. So it's like a pinned topic, but once you've seen it, you can, for your users, say, I've seen this, and it won't show it to you again, which is great. So we can have this here. And obviously, you can imagine this will be useful in the future for things like new releases, security announcements, upcoming events, perhaps, CFPs. It's a useful thing, and it's OK. I don't feel it's too intrusive because people can dismiss it once they've seen it. So at the moment, this gives you a little bit of an introduction into what Discourse is, which I'm also going to go over now, and perhaps how you if you want to get out of it, how you can use it, why it's not exactly the same as a mailing list, and so on. Right? So have a read through that. I think we probably need to do a better job of reading this and talking about how to use Discourse rather than how to not use it. But there we go. So let's talk here. So I've just seen a comment. Tony wanted to say he prefers Google Groups. Thanks for saying that, Tony. I do think Google Groups is very limited. That's the main problem I have with it. Is simply that mailing lists in general are just very, very limited. But I appreciate your viewpoint and your honesty. So thank you for that. It is possible to interact with this by email. And so let me ask you a different question though. Do you use Google Groups by the web interface or by email? So let me know that, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so what else do we see? We see categories. So realistically, right now, there's a few things that you won't see in the long term. So we've got a testing area that will probably go away once we've got rid of that. And then we have these 3 categories here, which are imported from Google Groups. So for normal users, these are locked. You can't post to these. And that's because I don't want to clutter up the interface. Interface? No, that's not what I want. I don't want to clutter up the archive that's being imported from Google Groups right now. So I don't want us to mix threads that are from the UI, from Discourse, and threads that are coming in from Google Groups. Eventually, once the final import's done, we probably merge these together. So Foreman users would get merged with support because they are the same thing, right? It's just a case of right now I'm keeping them separate so we can be clear what's what. So these are like the archives, and these are the equivalents. Then it's not really being used at the moment. It's kind of a toy. Obviously, why would anybody go here when we still have the mailing lists? It's what we call the network effect, right? Wherever the conversations are happening, that's where they continue to happen. But if you want to play with it, this is absolutely open, and you can. Let me show you how. If you click the login button, you can use the same email address here that you use with the mailing list. Your account is already there. And you can log in and basically you put your email in and you click I forgot my password, and it will email you the password. And then you can log in. I obviously already have my account, so I'm just going to log in. There we go. And once you're logged in, obviously for me, the banner's gone. I've already dismissed it. I get new topic, which wasn't there when I'm anonymous, obviously. I can see these extra categories, which are for admins and things, which you won't be able to see. Which I find actually quite useful because actually it's potentially possible to do things like storing infrastructure information and other secure things that we need to share with people without necessarily sharing it to the entire community. Now, it's an irony that for something that's open, that sometimes you do have to have closed information, right? So this is potentially one way to do that, but it's a minor point. It's not worth going into. So just to follow up what Tony said, and also Callum as well. Thank you, Callum. So Tony, if you're on web only, yeah, there's not a lot I can do about that. Realistically, what can I say? Yeah, I don't have a good answer to that, to be quite honest. I'd be interested to know how many people do that. If anyone else is on who's watching who uses Google Groups through the web only, I don't know about you, but I find that interface really limiting, like really limiting. And by email, it's just another mailing list. You could host it anywhere, right? But by web only, wow, I'll be honest, that's not a use case I'd considered. Hopefully it's okay. One of the things I like about Discourse is the notification stuff. If you're using the web, it can tell you when there's new posts, which is quite useful if it's notifications for only things you care about, which is quite useful. Callum, absolutely. So I'm going to come on to interacting by mail. Yes. So, okay, so that's interesting. I'm just going to read this out for people, actually. For people who are watching this later who can't see the chat, I'm just going to read this out. So Callum says that, in his opinion, Google Groups is a pain to use and forms the only community on there that he regularly looks at that isn't already on a dedicated forum. So he could use an email client, but the volume of the mail there requires me to manage is silly if it's my sole forum interface. Okay, yeah, all right, fair enough. So absolutely you can use email, and I want to spend quite a bit of time on that. Because obviously there's going to be people who care about that. That's expected. So once we've been around the UI a little bit, I'll talk a little bit about the email stuff, if that's okay with people. I'm just going to quickly take a look at chat and just see if anything's going on elsewhere. Not really. Thanks people already contributing by Google, by the YouTube chat. There's nothing happening on IRC just now, so that's great. So let's continue. So let's see what creating a new post looks like. So I'm going to put myself in the position of a new user. New users just come in and they are wanting to get some help, right? So here's a nice category right at the top. Need help with Foreman? Ask a question here. Okay, so I'm going to click here. And there's not much here at the moment, but immediately you can see we've got the ability to mark posts as solved, which is quite useful. So I quite like that. And I'm going to create a new topic. And this is a nice thing. We have a template. Now, this only exists on this category. We don't do this on like the development category, but this is an attempt to help people get good help, right? So you see this a lot in bug trackers. I know GitHub can do this with its templates as well. And the idea is to try and lead people into writing a good bug report, right? Or a good question so that they can get the help they need. But what I find quite interesting is it also tries to suggest similar things. So if I take this away and I say, hey guys, got an issue with Catello, and my microphone might be cutting out because I'm typing and talking at the same time, but hopefully it's intelligible. It's not going to do it now. It's not going to do it. So what normally happens, I don't know why it's not doing it right now. Probably something to do with my weird internet connection, I think, or I just haven't typed enough text yet. Let's try something like active record. But what normally happens here, and this probably happens when you've got more text, is this side starts suggesting posts that are similar to what you've posted. Let me see if I can find some stack traces from recent times and actually post some logs or something that might trigger it to say, hey, this looks similar to something else. I'm just going to get my Foreman logs together. You'd think I'd have prepared this or something, right? But no, I don't have time for that. So let me have a look at my development.log. And I'm just, oh, great, there's a stack trace right here at the top of the log. I just love it when that happens. So I'm going to grab a whole bunch of stack trace rubbish, and I'm going to post it in here. And it's not going to do it, is it? It's not going to do it. Something else. It's. What if I take that away? If I just. Okay, I don't know why it's not doing it. I'll need to look into that. I think it's possibly because there's not a lot of posts. Actually, maybe if I try posting that in Foreman users. And then I'll change this. We must have had econ refused before in Foreman users. No, it's going to be a pest. Okay. I've seen it do this. Every time I've created a post in the last week, it started doing this. And now, of course, live on air, it absolutely won't. But you just love live demos. I can see in chat other people are saying they've seen this in other places. It's a golden feature when you're typing something in and it says, hey, this looks like a post that we've already seen. And that means people will go and jump on that thread rather than starting a new one. So it cuts down duplication. It helps people get the answers they're looking for. Just really, really nice way of guiding users to the right solutions. Or even if there's no solution, that template helps them to get a good post in there and get the support they're looking for. Other thing we have, I'm not 100% convinced if we're going to use this yet, but we also can do tags. So at the moment, there's not very many. And if at the moment, everybody can create tags because we're still playing with it. Obviously, future, probably restrict that. We'll have a limited number of tags. I can definitely see tags for plugins being a thing rather than a category per plugin. That seems too broken down, too many categories. But a tag per plugin is definitely an option. And so I can say, this is a demo, and I can give it a topic. Oh, there we go. I didn't give it a title. That's what it was. So now immediately I'm getting my post is similar to things in Foreman users, things in Foreman dev, yada, 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 right? So you can immediately see this is trying to help people to go the right way. So I think this is really nice for getting people to come and find the right help. So this is great for engaging people and keeping them not keeping them in the community, but at least getting them a good experience the first time they come to the community or whenever they need to interact with us. I think that's important. I'm not going to actually post that because we've got enough random rubbish on this board already. But I'm going to show you what a trial one looks like, and you can see that I replied to it. I actually replied to it by email. There's the email inbound, and then I marked that as a solution. So, and you can see immediately in the top post, solved by Gilvin in post 2. So straight away, if I see a thread that's interesting to me, I can go click on it and see if it's got a solution. This is great for users. Once you've been using the forum for a little while, Discourse starts to take note of what you spend your time looking at. And this is automatic. So if you spend more than a few minutes in a thread, that thread becomes watched. So you can see down here, I'm watching because I created it in actual fact. But normally speaking, if you go into a thread you've not been in before and you spend at least a few minutes reading the replies, Discourse notices that and will watch that topic for you so that any new replies to that topic you will get a notification for. In addition to that, you can watch whole categories, and you can choose 2 ways of doing that. In fact, let me show you how that works. So if you go to your user settings, you can go to notifications, and you can say, okay, right, so topics are new if they were created in the last 2 days. So this is useful if you don't come very frequently. Track things after 4 minutes, so you can obviously change this. If you spend some time in a post, it becomes watched. You get notifications about new replies. Track it when you post. You can get notifications about likes, which are a web-specific thing. I don't know how popular likes will be. It might be that most of us continue to interact with this by email, in which case likes are not so valuable. We will see what happens. But nonetheless, I've got some control over my notifications. I can notify on categories, and there's some differences here. So I can watch a whole category, like so, and then I would get a notification or indeed an email for every post that came into that category. Or I could say watch first post, which I think is actually for a lot of people what you really want. You could say, okay, show me the question, and if I know the answer, I'll get involved. But if I don't know the answer, I don't want to hear the rest of the thread, right? So for a lot of people, this is quite useful for keeping the amount of notifications to a minimum. And of course, you can mute things. And likewise, you can do this for tags as well. So if you work on a plugin or something, you could put plugins you're interested in on your watch categories. And that gives you the ability to control the amount of posts coming to your inbox and coming to your notification tray. This helps to cut down on the amount of stuff you don't read. I will freely admit that at one point, even I, as the community guy, had 1,000 unread mails in my Foreman users folder. At that point, it's just failed. The system has failed at that point, right? It's never going to work. So the ability to keep this down, I think, is quite useful. On top of that, we've spoken briefly so far about email. Let's go into that in a little more detail. So firstly, you can control to some extent what sort of email you get. So I will show you my email inbox in a minute, and we can talk about what that looks like on this end. I use Thunderbird, so I'll be showing you that. I'll happily take feedback from people on how other clients look in this. But Thunderbird's quite good because I can show you both plain text and the HTML versions of the emails. But first of all, what can I actually control? Well, firstly, I can talk about previous replies. Now, this applies the first time you're involved in a thread. So let's suppose a thread's got 5, 6, 7, 10 posts, and now someone includes you in this discussion, right, for various reasons. The next time you get an email, it will send you some posts. it will say, here's some context on the thread, so that when you get included in the thread, you're not left going, what the hell, I have no idea what you people are all talking about. You don't get, so the default is unless previously sent. I've got it turned off because I'm getting every email anyway. You can also have a in reply to, so you can turn this off if you don't like the in reply to section. So basically that just shows you the previous mail. So if I reply to, let's say, Marek, then the mail that you get from Discourse has my reply and Marek's reply underneath, right? When to email me, so you can turn this off if you don't ever want any email. If you're a pure web user, you can turn this off, you never get email. This last one is subtle. Send me email notifications when I'm active. By default, this is off. So basically it says if you're on the UI, we'll just keep everything to the UI. If you go away, then we'll start sending you emails. And what's the subtlety is that there's a 5-minute delay on sending emails anyway, which is there for people to quickly go, oh, I didn't put the link in that I was talking about, so I'm going to edit my post and put the link back in. So we give a 5-minute grace time before emails go out. And so therefore, there's no chance of missing information. It's the same 5-minute cutoff. Either you're within the 5-minute grace time before emails are sent, and you've been active in those 5 minutes, so therefore we know we can send it. You know, if you close your browser at the exact same time as someone hits a post, then those 5 minutes are going to time out at the same time, and you're going to get an email, basically. If not, if you're still active, you can see it in the UI. I've got this set to send it anyway, so it doesn't check. It's like always send emails. Again, it's a question of how much email do you want? Do you want it to just tell you while you're away, or do you want everything because you want a record? And then finally down here, there's mailing list mode. This is off by default. I think it's probably better to subscribe to the categories you're interested in using these sections. But if you really, really want it, you can have mailing list mode, which will send you everything, every category, every post. You can choose to ignore your own posts if you've got good integration with your sent folder and so on. Thunderbird's quite good at that. Then you can turn it off. I've chosen to keep everything. So that's kind of the brief overview of how email works. What does it look like? Let me open up a thread that we had recently. Testing area. I think was it here or was it in support? It might have been in support, actually. Yeah, here we go. So we had a testing thread here. So this was Lukash and I going back and forth on a few things. So yeah, there's a thread here, right? How does this look in my inbox? Let's go and have a look. I'll have to go and find what I've done with my inbox first. Here it is. So let's bring this across. I should be able to screen share Thunderbird. Where's it gone? Before I do that, I'm just going to make sure I'm looking at the right thing. I don't really want to accidentally expose tons of my personal mail on live on YouTube, so that's not going to help. So here we go. Where's it gone? Oh, that's Thunderbird gone. It was in my screen share options a minute ago. Now I can't find it. Ah, here we go. Okay, this isn't going to be massively readable because the font's a bit small. But if I pick something like, I think, this mail here, you can see it's got threaded structure. This is plain text. So if I pick something like this, so here you can see a quote with the quote marker, interesting, and a nice plain text kind of. This is basically the same as what you see on Google Groups, right? You get 3 lines about how to go and see it in the web UI and how to unsubscribe to it if you want to unsubscribe. And that unsubscribe is actually, I think it's a legal requirement actually for all sort of mailing / marketing type stuff. You have to include an unsubscribe footer. So there it is. If we compare that to what that looks like in the UI, that was here. That's this post here. So you can see there's the quote, there's that. The only thing that's different is the footer. If I look at that in HTML view, so let's go view message body in original HTML, click out, click away, come back. Here it is. Oh no, it's not going to do that, is it? There we go. Got it. So again, oh no, it's not got it. It's weird. It's doing strange. Thunderbird's being strange. Anyway, you can see it's slightly different. I'll go for a different email, but it's basically the same. You've got the big blue button, which is slightly more intrusive, I guess, on HTML mail, but not a lot bigger. And nice profile pictures and stuff. I've obviously elected to allow content from community.theforeman.org, so the pictures are auto-loading. But obviously, you'd be able to control that. So, the basics are here. You can start threads by email. You can reply to threads by email. The important thing when you reply to threads by email, this uses a fairly common system, when you reply to a mail, where the hell's that gone? That email's gone somewhere random. Where is it? I've got so many windows open on one desktop now. Here we go. You probably can't see that though. I wonder if I can do a reply in a new tab and then I don't have to reshare. Yeah, I'll do it here. So if I go to the top, what's important is who's it going to. Is it going to let me edit that? It's not going to let me edit that, is it? Ah, that's so annoying. Okay, never mind. I'll just share the window. The reason I want to make this clear is I want to show people how this is working, because it's important to. There's a slight caveat. Here we are. So what's important is it uses this fairly common pattern that you see in many applications where you have reply plus token as the address. Now, why is that important to know? It's important because some mail clients actually store these and you end up with thousands of them in your address book, right? So you might want to blacklist that. This is important because it prevents address spoofing. So if you try and send a post as me, if you forge the from header and try and send it as my email address, it will throw it out because these tokens are unique both per user and per post. So for the same post, everybody gets a different token. And that means you have to have the right token for the right address in order to actually spoof me. Now, of course, you could spoof me right now because I just showed you the token, but I'm sure you all won't do that. There is an option to allow that to work just off the message IDs, but that, of course, allows message spoofing. So for now, I've left it alone. If it causes people problems or whatever, we can talk about it. Right, so that's kind of email. It's pretty much there. You know, the basics are there. You can email in. So you can email users at the community.theforeman.org, and that will get you a new thread. Or you can reply. Obviously, if you've got the reply to tokens, then you can reply to a thread, and that'll work too. So it is possible to pretty much entirely interact with this via email. Obviously, there are a few things that don't go to email. So if someone likes a post, then you don't get emails about that. If someone edits a post, you don't get the edited version. So we're considering locking down the edit window when you can edit your own posts to be the same as the email timeout, that same 5-minute window, so that you don't lose anything. And the last one is polls, of course. So if I were to do a poll, then you don't get the clicks on the poll. I think that would be quite spammy. So, you know, if I just delete all of this and I say build a poll, this, and I want, you know, yes, no, there you go. If you click on this, those clicks don't go to email. Now, I don't think that's a big deal because those things are usually only useful to the people who are going to conclude the discussion. And of course, when you conclude the discussion, you nearly always write a new post that says, hey, so this is the results and this is what we're going to do next. So realistically, there's not a lot lost there. Okay, so that's kind of notifications. I wanted to talk about, I'm just going to take a brief pause there and look for new questions. Nope, I don't see any questions at the moment. So this is good. So there's two last points I wanted to talk about. The first is I talked a bit about getting the right people involved in a discussion. So if you consider the situation where people are perhaps following first post only for certain categories, or not even following certain categories at all, then you want to make sure you're still able to get them in. And there's two ways that works. Firstly, you can mention people. So I can say something like, hey, I have Toma on here, let's say. Yeah, Toma Brisker. Hey, Toma, what do you think of this, right? So even if Toma hasn't been watching the particular thread that we're talking about, or if it's a new thread, obviously, whatever, and then he's going to get a message anyway now because he's been explicitly mentioned. So this is particularly useful for pulling individual people in that you know are the right people to contribute to a discussion. But better than that, we're quite a big community now, and it isn't always easy, even for people like myself who are quite well embedded in the community, to know who's involved in everything. If I want to know who's working on, let's say, the Foreman Docker plugin right now, that's a challenge, right? Any given plugin, any given part of the code base, you know, who's active on Ansible stuff, who's active on Chef stuff, who's active on JavaScript stuff, who's active on React changes, who's looking after infrastructure. This is a very fluid thing, and it's impossible to keep track of it. So what we have is groups, and you can self-select. So we're proposing to make a selection of groups. So you can see here I've got one for Catello, and I can see that John and Tom McKay are currently in it. Obviously, we'd like that to be larger. And the idea is that if I have a Catello question, I can come and say, hey, at Catello, I can't spell, Catello, what's up here? And that will notify all of them, right? And then they can all come in and say, oh, I didn't see this post. Sorry about that. Let me have a look, try and help you out. So this is really important. This is really useful in development discussions where you can say, hey, packaging team, is this going to break? Or hey, JavaScript team, is there a better way to do this? But it's also useful in support as well, where there might be that, you know, we have a certain number of people who are very active on the Foreman users mailing list, but they don't know all the answers. And so even if they're just helping out as the first point of call, and then we can pull in people who perhaps are trying to keep the amount of email in their inbox down to a minimum, then this is better for everyone, right? So that's groups, which I think is good. The other thing I wanted to talk about briefly was we talked about how we re-engage people and how we reward people as well, how we recognize people. And there's two parts to that. Firstly, we have what's called trust levels. Now, everybody right now who is being on the mailing list is what's called trust level 2, which is like a forum regular, basically. But if you put in time and effort, if you spend a lot of time on the forum, those trust levels increase. They go as high as 4, although to get to 4 is manual change only. But trust level 3, and new users will obviously start at trust level 0. And basically, you get it by just spending time on the forum and doing forum things, or indeed by email as well. You're posting, reading posts. You'll get the basics. Those trust levels can be assigned to permissions. So for example, as people spend more time in the community, you can give them the ability to moderate stuff, to create new tags, for example, move posts around, do cleanup forum, and help out with forum stuff, which means the community auto-scales, right? There's no need for individual people like myself to decide that someone has earned the rights to something. It's automatic. So this is quite useful. And then obviously you can do queries on this, and you can say things like, who are all of my trust level 3 and 4 people? Now I can go and speak to them and say, hey guys, we've got a problem, or we want to invite you to, we want to thank you in some way, whatever it might be, right? I can do queries like that and find out who's been active and so on, even if I'm busy on something, which is great. The other thing is about re-engagement. We talked a bit about how you quite often get people who post once and then go away. So what Discourse does on that is what's called a digest email. This is quite common on mailing lists anyway, but it's quite nicely done. Because this is a forum, we know a little bit more about your behavior on the forum. I mean, obviously, if you interact entirely by email, we don't. But if you do use the web UI, then we know which posts you've been involved in, what you're tracking, what you're not tracking. And so we can try and build a digest that is tailored to you and might interest you. So there'll be like the popular posts and also the posts that you might be interested in, which is quite useful. Now, I don't have one of these to show you for Foreman. I have disabled digests right now because I don't want to spam people. There's 2,000 people signed up to our mailing list, or, well, that's a nuance. There aren't actually, but there's 2,000 accounts in Discourse right now. I do not want to spam them with digests, right? So it's disabled right now. But I can show you what one looks like for another community. If I have a quick look in my mail client, I will find you one. Let's have a look. OpenHab summary. So OpenHab is a community that I'm part of. I'm going to open this in Classic Reader. There we go. And then I'm going to screen share that. Here we go. So this is my summary: new topics, new posts, new users, popular topics, and a bit further down, popular posts and things that are new, specific to me, that might be interesting to me. So this is an attempt to say, hey, you're still valuable to the community. Come back, share some more with us. Is it guaranteed to work? Absolutely not. But I think it's better than what mailing lists do, in an attempt to try and bring people back in and try and keep them as part of the community and let them help out a little more or contribute more. And I think that's really important for our community. I think we have a lot of knowledgeable people in our community, and I'm always sad when someone leaves. So I think that's important. So I'm running out of steam a little bit now. So if anyone's got any questions, now is a really good time to ask them. Otherwise, I'm going to start sort of wrapping this up, I think. It's been a bit of a ramble. There's a lot to this. There's a lot of capability. I've heard a lot of positive support for it. I've heard a lot of people being cautious and a few people who really don't like it. I've heard probably 2 or 3 people who are not happy, but I've heard more in the order of 10 to 15 people who are happy. So I think unless there's a massive outcry, I think this is likely to go ahead in some form. I think there's a debate to be had on whether this is just for Foreman users or whether we also migrate Foreman dev. There's good arguments on both sides of that, which we can do another time. And there's also a debate about whether we run this alongside the mailing list or whether we do a hard cutover. I would favor a hard cutover because I don't think it actually gains us very much by running them alongside. If you know the proposal by Marek this afternoon was to run them alongside and then spend effort basically redirecting everyone to the forum, and I think you could just do that with an appropriate bounce message. So yeah, I think there's some discussion to be had there. I'm not against running them side by side. I think it just makes us a lot of work without a lot of benefit because, you know, if you decide this isn't for us, if we decide this isn't for us, we've still got another migration to do. You've still got users and posts that exist on Discourse that don't exist on the mailing list. And that's if we go back to Google Groups. I would actually favor, if we don't like Discourse, I would actually favor moving to a new mailing list that keeps our domain so that, you know, users at community.theforeman.org continues to work. Because we've already migrated once. Why would we want to make people change their address books again, right? So you'd want to go to something like GNU Mailman with a proper custom domain on it, something like that, right? So yeah, I'm okay with running them side by side. I just think it generates work without a huge amount of value. Someone has asked me if there's a tentative timeline. I don't have anything fixed in stone. I think we need some time for people to process this. You know, I gave it 2 weeks on the dev list before I brought it to the users list. It's only been a week since I opened up this debate on the users list, so we need to give this a little more time. I will, of course, be pushing it. And when I say pushing it, I don't necessarily mean pushing people to agree with it. I just mean making sure it's in people's minds so that they can continue to give their thoughts on it. In the meantime, the instance is open, and you are absolutely welcome to go and play with it. It is possible you've come across Discourse before. I've seen it used in a whole bunch of other communities. GitLab use it, Chef use it, OpenHab, obviously, if you're into automation like me. Ubuntu have just switched to it as well. So if you're Ubuntu users, you might well already be familiar with it. I would say there's going to be at least another couple of weeks of sort of consultation. You know, barring any major outcry, I think this is likely to go ahead in some form. I think then there's a period in which we need to sort of ramp things up. We need to set a date. The actual migration is not hard. It's probably half an hour to an hour's work. But obviously we need to give people appropriate notice and to spend some time making sure we have some moderators who know how Discourse works and how to take action if, say, there's spam or flagged posts or what have you. We'll also need to spend some time deciding things like, you know, what tags we want, what groups we want, things like this, right? If you're interested in all of that migration kind of plan, I've drafted it. It's on the forum. It's in the testing area. You can go and have a look. It's a long document, but I'm open to contributions on that. But basically, it boils down to let's spend about 3 weeks notifying people and training people, and then do the cutover. If that were to go ahead right away, that would put us around about New Year, maybe early January, which is plenty of time for us to be, you know, comfortable with where things are at. Now that could change. You know, nothing's set in stone, but that's kind of where I'm thinking right now is where we're going to end up. And that's not a bad time to do things. It's quiet after Christmas. There's not a huge amount of traffic, so yeah, that seems realistic. So in that case, I'll have a final check for questions. We have a late +1 from Alejandro there. Thank you. Or at least for moving away from Google Groups. It doesn't say what you want to move to. Someone wants to do it during Christmas. That possibly is a bit short notice. I'd be okay with that, like in the week between Christmas and New Year. But I think getting training done for people while the holidays are on is going to be a little bit tricky. So But hey, if people think we should just get on with it, then I'm totally down with that. I want to get us moved over and getting used to it. So let's conclude. Thanks to everyone who's been part of this today. We've had sort of consistently about 10 viewers, and I think most of them have actually been involved at some point, which is really nice for once. Normally we get 20 people in the demos who don't say much. I'm going to kill my screen share and actually, look to camera. Look to camera. Come on. So thanks for listening today. I hope if people are watching this watching the recording later on, that they'll give their thoughts on the Foreman users list. Overall, I feel like this is going to happen, and it's a good thing for the community. I wouldn't have proposed it if I didn't think it was a good thing for the community. And I genuinely feel we can't ignore that data, that the mailing list is dying. You could try and explain it in other ways, but I don't think there's enough proof. You could say that we're better we've got less bugs, or we've got better documentation, but I don't think Redmine supports that. I think there's more bugs than ever that have been opened. Something's not right, and we need to take action. And it's to me, it's not simply a case of let's put a better front end on a mailing list. I think fundamentally the features of a mailing list don't support what we need to do to make this better. I hope most of you will agree with me and come with me on this. It's a pretty big journey. It's a pretty big move. But I look at the number of communities that have moved over to this that seem to be doing it well, and I don't think it's bad. I think it will take some getting used to. I think some people will leave, but the others will join, and that we're better off as a result. Not to say that I want those people to leave. I'll be sad to see them go, of course, but overall, for the health of the community, I think it's better. Now, there are still decisions to take and so on, but overall, this is going to happen, I think. Sorry, my nose is starting to go. It's pretty huge, but I think it's pretty awesome. I reached out. This is only one data point, so you can draw any conclusion you like from it. But I reached out to the chef community to find out how it has gone for them. They moved 2 years ago, and they had a terrible migration. If you read some of the history, some of the blog posts that were written around the migration, it did not go well for them. And that it wasn't. It's not Discourse's fault, to be clear. The key point was they didn't tell anybody. So they had a big issue where literally people started getting mails from Discourse because they didn't disable the digest or anything either. And so literally all of the people that had ever interacted with their mailing list suddenly started getting emails from Discourse. This was not popular, shall we say. Despite that, 2 years down the line, they're still very happy with it, and they said that they would do it again if they found themselves in that situation again. And I think that's quite telling. This is a community that's not that different to us. We're both in the configuration management space. If anything, they're more command line than we are. We're a UI product at the end of the day. We have a web app, right? It's something you can click on. And so I would expect us to have more people who are happy with UIs than say a pure language community. So I feel like it's the right move, but I need to hear it from you guys. So go and post on the thread. I know the whole point is to move away from mailing lists, but this one last time, you actually have to go and use one, and actually tell me that you're okay with this, and then we'll get it done. All right. Thanks everyone for listening. As always, I will see you next time, and do take care.